Hey folks, this is Kalani. Patch 10.0.7 is chugging along quite nicely, and it seems like we will probably see a release date quite soon. For this week we have a lot of class changes, buffs and nerfs to go through, including some huge changes for hunters, which some players we're very happy with if you don't have a particular item, and others not so much. There are also some changes to how public work orders are going to work, and we're about to run out of time to grab our current round of trading post goodies, so let's break down everything going on this week and see how the patch is shaping up so far. Before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's start with the class changes for this week, because some of these might surprise you. We've got the general kind of buff and nerf stuff that we're used to, but some classes will see some heavy nerfs to certain areas of their kit, but big buffs to try and even things out. For the Death Knights, there's an interesting change for runic power spenders. Breath of Sindragosa damage has been increased by 25%, but runic power spent has also been increased, so you won't be able to keep the breath going quite as long, but you should deal more damage in a shorter period of time. Frost Strike will also see a damage boost as well as a runic power cost increase to create the same scenario. You basically just get more DPS out of your runic power with both types of spenders. Moving on, druids will see a few changes as well. The new effect on Stellar Flare when it gets dispelled has been changed to no longer be an AoE effect, so it just deals damage and knocks back the person who dispelled Stellar Flare. Then we have some buffs and nerfs for Feral too. Merciless Claws is buffed up to 15%, Berserk Frenzy was nerfed down to 100% of damage dealt from 125%, and then Shred, Swipe, Brutal Slash and Thrash damage were all increased by 6%. Evokers have a very quick change to a previous change. The new version of Ouroboros will only stack up to 5 times, but the total effect will remain the same, so it just stacks up twice as quickly. Monks are once again getting some quick number tuning. Lesson of Fear's haste buff was nerfed, Shaelin's gift healing and enveloping mists healing were both increased, there's a quick ability rename, and Shaelin's gift clouds will now reset properly when you reset encounters or dungeons. Paladins are back with another long list of changes. To start with, a lot of talents are moving around and some talents are being moved into the class tree but as retribution spec only talents, which is kind of interesting. There are some new talents being added in, various talents have been slightly adjusted, and there are a whole bunch of bug fixes too. For Holy specifically, there's a bug fix for Dusk and Dawn, and for Protection, Seal of Charity can no longer crit and should no longer double dip on versatility, so that's a double whammy right there, and then there's also a bug fix for Uther's Council. With so much of our lives and important information being digitized these days, it's imperative to make sure that personal data is secure. NordVPN and its latest feature, Threat Protection, can keep you safe while surfing, shopping, gaming or traveling by combating malware, malicious ads and websites, blocking intrusive trackers, and ensuring your privacy is always intact. Simply enable Threat Protection in the NordVPN app settings to get rid of threats and step up your cybersecurity without falling behind in speed or responsiveness. NordVPN is also compatible with most operating systems, including Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS, and Android, so you can protect your PC, phone, tablet, and have up to 6 devices all protected at once. Plus, you can change your virtual locations with no data login in over 60 countries. It's one of the easiest ways to overcome blocked online content, whether it's a website or a streaming service. So go to nordvpn.com/Kalani or click the link in the description to get an exclusive NordVPN deal, and if you're quick, you can join in with NordVPN's 11th birthday celebration. For a limited time only, you will also receive an additional bonus gift, and it's all risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Now getting back to the video, for Retribution specifically, we've got another long list of updates for the big rework. We have even more new talents being crammed into the Ret talent tree, several talents and passives are getting buffs, Art of War's chance to trigger was increased, several abilities had their damage increased, and there are a lot of tuning changes for the newly added talents that we saw last week, and there are also a lot of bug fixes. It's going to be a lot of this kind of stuff between now and when the patch goes live. The first few weeks we saw the rework taking shape, so now it's time to make sure it works and it's not too overpowered. I can't wait to see the huge list of changes from 10.05 to 10.07 for Ret Paladin specifically. It's going to be great. I've been having a lot of fun so far tinkering about with the changes for Ret. Having more options for attacking at a limited range instead of just melee range is really fun and will make it easier to keep your uptime on targets higher while dodging mechanics and swirlies. There are also a lot of options for AoE and cleave builds, and there are various ways to play with drastically different rotations. You can even make Crusader Strike just your auto attack, which is interesting. I am definitely getting a Paladin ready to play in 10.07 because this might be the most fun I've had with a melee spec in a while. And then the shamans are also in this week's list. Quite a few extra abilities will be tracked in the personal resource display, and then Resto will also see some buffs to the improved Primordial Wave talent, as well as the improved Earth Living Weapon talent. Now there is one more class that will see some huge changes heading into patch 10.07 at this point, the Hunters. A major contributing factor to a Beast Mastery or Marksmanship Hunter's performance in Dragonflight so far has been the special bow that only drops from razsageth, Neltharax. The bow provides you with a huge attack speed buff as long as you attack the same target, so you can imagine that's incredibly powerful in any raid encounter where you don't have to swap off the boss too often, and you can use mouse over macros to use abilities on other targets without changing your auto attack target, so there's a few tricks you can employ to keep that buff rolling as long as possible. Attack speed also interacts with Beast Mastery in a particularly advantageous way, making it a must-have item if you really want to push your hunter to the max. Well, the bow is getting nerfed into the ground. Instead of providing an increasing attack speed buff, it's going to just increase the damage of auto shots. That's not going to scale anywhere near as well, and auto shot damage typically isn't that much of our overall damage profile, so it's a huge nerf to the overall effectiveness of the bow. To offset these changes, hunters will be getting some pretty big buffs in 10.07. To start with, Serpent Sting damage will be increased by 25% and Death Chakram damage increased by 100%, so that'll be great for all hunter specs. But then Beast Mastery will get a 25% buff to Kill Command, Barbed Shot and Stomp damage, and a 50% damage increase to Cobra Shot. Those are some hefty buffs for some of Beast Mastery's most damaging abilities. For Marksmanship, Arcane Shot and Chimera Shot damage will be increased by 25% and multi-shot damage will be increased by 15%, so not quite the huge buffs as what are coming to Beast Mastery, but in all fairness, the bow did provide a larger benefit to Beast Mastery to begin with, so these buffs kind of reflect how much the bow was providing in terms of a damage increase to both of those specs. Now, all of these numbers are obviously still subject to change until 10.07 hits live servers, and even then we might see some more changes after that, but all in all, this should be a pretty nice buff for Beast Mastery especially. What's kind of funny here is that the bow nerf only really affects the players who actually had the bow, right? The ones who are lucky enough to get it. So if you had the bow, that's getting nerfed, but these buffs should more than make up for it. But if you didn't have the bow, this will end up being a massive buff to your overall performance because you're no longer entirely reliant on that bow to maximize your hunter's potential. It's still going to be good because the auto attack damage is better than nothing, and the item level is higher than other bows, so you'll get more stats from it, but it's not going to be the big make it or break it item that it currently is. So a win for the hunters with the bow, but a huge win for the hunters without the bow. In other news this week, there are also some changes coming through for crafting orders in 10.07. There are some slight changes to the user interface to make the windows smaller overall, which is definitely nice. They were quite large, but the main change is coming to how public orders work. In 10.0.7, you will no longer have to provide all of the materials in a work order to post it to the public work order board. You will still have to provide any and all bind-on pickup materials like Sparks or Primal Chaos, but you can now leave the other materials blank if you want to. Now obviously you shouldn't expect a crafter to pick up the tab on all of these items, so if you don't provide the actual materials, you will need to provide enough gold to cover the cost of the materials, otherwise there's no real reason for a crafter to fulfill your order. Crafters aren't going to lose gold on a public crafting order unless they really need the skill ups, so removing the restriction here probably won't do too much in the grand scheme of things, but I guess it could make it easier for crafters to get some skill ups by providing some expensive materials. The other major problem here is how restrictive public orders are now. You can only complete 4 public orders per day, or at least it's supposed to be 4 per day, but it seems to be bugged more often than not, only letting you fill 1 order per day. But my main point here is that if you only have 4 public orders to fill each day, you're going to go after the most profitable orders, so losing gold by providing materials on a low commission order won't be very high on the priority list. So if you want to try get something crafted by skipping over providing materials, be sure you're providing enough gold to cover the cost. Personally, I would still just provide materials because it's easier and you'll then have a higher chance of getting your order filled, but ultimately it is up to you. I think the only way to create real value in the public work order system is to allow players to set a minimum quality in their work order, but that's probably the very last change the dev team would consider, as it would significantly devalue the entire private work order system. There would literally be almost zero reason to do it anymore. I am very interested to see how things develop as we head into major patches like 10.1 and into 10.2 though. The way the entire profession system is currently set up makes it very difficult to add on to without having some soft resets, so I will definitely keep my eye on that. Do you think the ability to provide less materials will be useful in 10.0.7? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on in this week's video is the trading post. February's offerings will soon become unavailable and replaced with a whole new round of goodies when we tick over to March 1st. So this is your last chance to get your Trader's Tender, work through the Traveler's Log to earn more Trader's Tender and that super cool color changing mount at the end, and then of course all of the items in the trading post itself. If you want to carry over one item to maybe buy it in March, you can also freeze one of the items just in case, but besides that, all of these items will no longer be available in the trading post when we enter March. We were told that some items may be rotated back in eventually, but we have no idea how long that could take. So if you want something, I would buy it now, or freeze it to buy it next month in case there's nothing you want in March. You know, whatever you want to do, but time is ticking. There is only a few more days until the trading post resets, so make sure you complete the Traveler's Log and have everything you want for this month. But that's all the class changes this week, some huge changes coming for Hunters, and all of the updates in 10.0.7. How do you feel about patch 10.07 as a whole from what you've seen so far? When do you think this patch could go live? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.